will be on the general election ballot despite an attempt to block her candidacy by an ally of current Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who is
a mayoral candidate being challenged. The saga surrounding embattled South suburban politics.
If you thought things in Dalton, Illinois couldn't get any messier, think again. Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who also serves as the supervisor of Thornton Township, is making headlines once more, and not for the reasons you'd expect from a public servant. This saga is nothing short of a never-ending roller coaster filled with public outrage, power struggles, lawsuits, and political chaos. But here's the twist. It's the community that's bearing the brunt of the turmoil. In many cases, honestly, the once, the twice, and the three times, and the fourth time. Henyard's controversial measures, including shutting down government services and even locking citizens out of public spaces, have sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. The question on everyone's mind is simple yet baffling. How is this still happening? How is this still happening?
Not at the hearing here today. Neither was her attorney, and she was not.
Residents of Thornton Township are reeling in frustration and struggling to comprehend the fallout of an unprecedented government breakdown. The latest crisis, a full-scale shutdown of township operations, has sent shockwaves through the community, exposing the administration's inability to carry out its fundamental duties. The Board of Trustees has repeatedly failed to meet, with 5 consecutive cancellations in recent weeks due to insufficient attendance to form a quorum. This dysfunction has brought vital township operations to a screeching halt, leaving residents, staff, and the community in a precarious position. One of the most immediate and devastating consequences is the township's inability to renew its insurance policies, a legal requirement for continued operations. Without this coverage, the government cannot function, forcing the suspension of essential programs and services. Vulnerable citizens who depend on transportation for medical appointments, food aid, and other critical support are now left in limbo, grappling with anger and uncertainty about their futures. The ripple effects extend to township workers who face potential layoffs just days before Christmas, a cruel and devastating blow during a season meant for hope and gratitude. Families are now left questioning how they will cope with the financial strain as they prepare for the holidays under a cloud of uncertainty. Many residents and community leaders are placing blame squarely on the trustees, whose repeated absences they view as a blatant disregard for their responsibilities. While some trustees have offered vague excuses, others have remained silent, fueling outrage among those who depend on the township's support. Residents who attended prior meetings described a tense atmosphere filled with bickering and minimal progress, further illustrating the government's inability to address urgent issues. So, sponge for you guys. Mayor Tiffany Henyard, already at the center of her own controversies, faces renewed criticism for failing to unify the board and allegedly fostering an environment of discord. Critics argue her leadership has only deepened the crisis, leaving the township in a state of disarray. X-rays, police reports from district officials, and a written report from the human impact of this shutdown cannot be overstated. Families relying on food assistance are left wondering how they'll put meals on the table. Seniors needing transportation for critical healthcare appointments are stranded. Every demographic feels the weight of the dysfunction, highlighting Thornton Township's vital role as a safety net for its most vulnerable citizens, a role now in jeopardy. Endless tasks in the kitchen, a role now in jeopardy. The shutdown is seen by many as a stark example of what happens when political infighting takes precedence over public service. The board's failure to fulfill its basic duties has left residents feeling abandoned by the leaders they once trusted. Calls for accountability are growing louder, with activists urging township leaders to put aside their differences and focus on the welfare of the community. With religious analysis, centers around people's excuses for coming to the concerts while sensitive, so residents focus on the welfare of the community. However, for many residents, this shutdown is the culmination of years of mismanagement and a lack of transparency. As the holiday season approaches, the timing of this crisis only deepens its impact, creating a harsh irony as families face the prospect of an uncertain and difficult future. Township workers, some of whom have dedicated years of service, are left wondering how they will support their families or provide for their children in the weeks ahead. The emotional toll on the community is immense. Vulnerable citizens have been deprived of essential services, while trust in leadership continues to erode. Thornton Township now stands as a stark reminder of what happens when governance fails and political dysfunction takes priority over the needs of the people. The calls for change are urgent and unrelenting, as residents demand reform to prevent further damage and ensure their voices are heard in the corridors of power.
Off behind me, the doors are locked here, and there's a sign on the building right now that says it's closed. For how long? Neither residents nor employees.
At a recent meeting, Thornton Township Supervisor and Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard publicly criticized absent trustees Karma Carlisle and Chris Gonzalez, accusing them of deliberately sabotaging township operations. Henyard alleged that their repeated absences were part of a calculated effort to prevent her from appointing a successor to an open trustee position, a move she insists is critical to resolving the political deadlock that has paralyzed the township. Announced, Henyard alleged that her supporting the township operations has paralyzed the township. Henyard's frustration was palpable as she chastised the trustees for what she described as holding the township hostage. She framed the situation as an urgent crisis requiring immediate action to restore services and address the needs of residents. However, her critics, including Gonzalez, offered a sharply different perspective, portraying her efforts as less about governance and more about consolidating power. Gonzalez fired back, accusing Henyard of attempting to bypass established checks and balances designed to prevent financial misconduct. He argued that her history of reckless spending made her unfit to unilaterally appoint a trustee, a move that could tip the balance of power in her favor. "We've worked hard to monitor financial decisions and keep things in check," Gonzalez said, reflecting a widespread sentiment among residents and officials wary of granting Henyard more authority. Wrote, "This debate underscores a fundamental divide between Henyard and her detractors. Critics have long accused her of fostering a polarizing leadership style, marked by unilateral decision-making, lack of transparency, and financial imprudence. They contend that her push to appoint a trustee is yet another example of prioritizing personal agendas over community welfare." For her part, Henyard insists her actions are driven by a genuine desire to revive township operations and resume vital services. Yet her track record complicates this narrative. Henyard's tenure has been marred by scandals, including allegations of financial mismanagement and extravagant spending. Critics cite these past controversies as a cautionary tale, arguing that granting her more power risks further exacerbating Thornton Township's troubles. One particularly contentious episode involved an $85,000 taxpayer-funded concert that drew a sparse crowd and a single-day $40,000 spending spree on Amazon, which sparked outrage among residents. Henyard's now-defunct cancer charity, once a source of pride, faced criticism for failing to account for donor spending, further eroding trust in her leadership. The fallout from this leadership crisis has hit the community hard. Vulnerable residents reliant on township services such as food assistance, elder transportation, and medical care find themselves left in limbo. Township staff face the bleak prospect of layoffs, while the political gridlock shows no signs of abating. Henyard's detractors argue that her insistence on appointing a trustee reflects a broader struggle for control rather than a genuine attempt to address the township's challenges. "This isn't about serving the community, it's about power," Gonzalez asserted. Many residents share this skepticism, expressing frustration with leadership that seems more focused on infighting than solving problems. Meanwhile, Henyard has tried to dismiss the dysfunction as akin to a high school play, a statement that critics say underscores the public's perception of a government mired in petty disputes and self-interest. The federal investigations into her actions, including subpoenas and mounting allegations, further cloud her tenure. As Thornton Township's services remain frozen, the stakes for reform have never been higher. Residents are demanding accountability from all sides, and the growing disillusionment with local government has fueled calls for sweeping changes. For Henyard, this impasse threatens to permanently damage her already fragile credibility. For the community, It is a stark reminder of the cost of political dysfunction, where personal ambition overshadows the pressing needs of the people. And Sony came in, punched it, and had the president leave the company. Sony came in, punched it, and the battle for Thornton Township's future has become a struggle over the very foundation of governance, leaving residents to wonder if their leaders will ever prioritize public service over personal power. The situation in Thornton Township reached a breaking point this week when Mayor Tiffany Henyard abruptly shut down township operations, escalating tensions between her administration and its growing pool of critics. And residents and staff were caught off guard as they arrived at the township building to find the doors locked, with no prior warning or communication about the shutdown. Jason V. Brown, the town assessor, expressed his frustration. "We got no notification, no warning, it was just gone. Once I saw the sign, it hit me. This shutdown follows a series of escalating problems, including the township's inability to renew its insurance policies due to a lack of quorum at board meetings, leaving essential services suspended." Henyard justified the closure, blaming absent trustees for delaying critical government business. However, critics argue that her decision to close the government without prior notice only exacerbates the crisis, affecting vulnerable residents who depend on township services like medical transportation and food assistance. Local advocacy groups have stepped in to help fill the void, but their resources are stretched thin. One volunteer coordinator emphasized the severity of the situation, stating, "We're doing everything we can to help, but the township should be providing these essential services, especially to those already living on the edge. This is a catastrophe, not just an inconvenience." The shutdown has had a far-reaching impact on the community, including the cancellation of Thornton Township's beloved annual holiday toy distribution. The event, which provides gifts to hundreds of local families, was scheduled for the weekend but was abruptly called off due to the ongoing turmoil. Parents expressed their anger on social media, with one homeowner stating, "Our kids are the ones paying the price." This is what happens when politics get in the way of doing what's right. This cancellation, along with the ongoing dysfunction, has only deepened the community's mistrust of Henyard and her leadership. As tensions rise, many residents are questioning whether Henyard's actions are driven by self-interest rather than a genuine desire to serve the community. Adding fuel to the fire, Henyard's media handling has come under fire. At a recent press conference, Henyard invited reporters to a small office, only to have several of them removed by her staff. Local reporters and television crews were told to leave, which has been described by many as an attempt to control the narrative. "She is constantly trying to control the conversation," said local YouTuber Burgundy Blue, who was present at the event. "How about someone who will actually carry out their duties and serve the people?" As if her political struggles weren't enough, Henyard's personal life has also been thrust into the spotlight. She is facing eviction from a Dalton property due to unpaid rent, with her landlord seeking damages and nearly $13,000 in overdue rent. Henyard left the residence in October, but her partner, Camel Wood, still resides there. This financial distress has raised questions about Henyard's ability to manage public finances, further fueling skepticism about her leadership. Public sentiment has reached a boiling point, with many residents calling for Henyard's resignation or even imprisonment. One commenter echoed the widespread frustration. "How is this woman not in prison? How can she manage public funds when she can't even manage her own finances?" Others, frustrated by the ongoing dysfunction, simply asked, "How can she hold the township hostage like this?" The community of Thornton Township and Dalton feels betrayed and abandoned. With federal investigations into Henyard's administration already underway and her credibility sinking, the stakes have never been higher. The township's residents are left wondering whether Henyard can hold on to her position or if the mounting pressure will force her out of office. As tensions continue to rise, the upcoming election may be the community's chance to demand meaningful change. And Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton and supervisor of Thornton Township seems to be hanging by a thread. With the shutdown of government services and a growing list of scandals, her ability to lead is increasingly in question. Her efforts to silence criticism, her history of financial mismanagement, and her failure to prioritize the community's needs have left many residents disillusioned. As we approach the February primary and the general election, Henyard's political future is uncertain. Henyard's political future is uncertain. Will she be able to weather the storm, or will her actions and the mounting public backlash force her from office? Only time will tell. What's your opinion? Should Tiffany Henyard remain in office, or is it time for new leadership? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates as this ongoing political drama unfolds.